All right, get ready because today we're going deep into one of history's most bone-chilling mysteries.
The Dyatlov Pass Incident,
Exactly, and we've got a mountain of material to sift through.
official reports,
Witness accounts,
even some scientific studies.
and our mission, should you choose to accept it, is to arm you with all the need-to-know info on this case.
By the end of this deep dive, you'll be a Dyatlov Pass pro.
Ready to impress your friends at your next true crime night.
What makes this case so fascinating is that it's this perfect storm of real-life tragedy and just mind-bending mystery.
Oh, yeah.
We've got all this data, all this evidence, but the story still just doesn't quite add up.
Doesn't quite add up, no.
Nope.
All right, so let's set the scene. 1959, Soviet Union. Picture a group of 10 seasoned hikers.
Experience hiker.
Yeah, getting ready for this really tough expedition across the Ural Mountains.
And these weren't just your average weekend hikers.
No.
This was a crew aiming for grade the third certification, which was, the highest hiking level in the Soviet Union back then.
Like the top of the top.
Top of the top, exactly.
So they knew what they were doing.
They were prepared.
And this group was led by Igor Dyatlov.
Respected radio engineering student.
And their route was carefully planned.
And even approved by the city's route commission.
So this wasn't just like a spur-of-the-moment trip.
No. Very well organized.
But here's where things get interesting. And this is where the mystery starts to unfold.
Okay.
One of the hikers, Yuri Yudin,
Yeah.
he had to drop out.
Early on, due to some health issues.
Yeah, he had like some leg pain, wasn't feeling well.
Yeah, and little did he know
Little did he know.
that his memories would become crucial later on.
Absolutely crucial because the remaining 9 hikers, they pressed on,
They did.
documenting their adventure.
In diaries, photos, thankfully we recovered these later on.
Yeah, so we have those as like little snapshots into their journey
Exactly, windows into their journey.
and up to that fateful night. Yeah.
Right, we can kind of trace their excitement, their struggles with the conditions. The weather wasn't great.
Yeah, we can see how their plans shifted because of that weather.
Exactly, it's all there in those diaries and those photographs.
Which brings us to their campsite.
Their campsite.
They actually veered off course.
Due to, that bad weather.
And they set up camp on the slope of this mountain.
Kolatshah.
It's a name that, sends shivers down your spine when you know the story.
Definitely, and that decision to camp there has been debated for decades.
It's such a crucial part of this whole mystery.
Yeah, because you see Yudin, the hiker who had to turn back,
Right.
he later revealed that Dyatlov might have chosen that particular spot to, maintain their altitude.
Like not lose the progress they had made.
Exactly, or maybe to practice mountain camping.
Oh, interesting. So almost like a training exercise.
Yeah, like a little side mission.
But it's a choice that, looking back, it really put them in a vulnerable position.
Oh, absolutely. Exposed to the elements off their intended path.
And then silence.
Silence.
It's like radio silence.
Yeah, there's supposed to be a telegram
They had agreed to send a telegram
confirming their safe return
to their sports club.
to their sports club, but that telegram never arrived.
Never reached its destination.
Yeah.
And that missing telegram, that's what triggered this massive search effort.
Yeah, and that search effort led to a discovery so unsettling, so bizarre, that it's become the stuff of legends.
The stuff of legends, exactly. And that's where we're going to pick up next time,
Can't wait.
because things are about to get really interesting.
Oh yeah, buckle up.
Buckle up indeed.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Dyatlov Pass Incident.
Where we left off, we were wrestling with these different theories.
Each one with its own strengths and weaknesses.
But that official avalanche explanation,
Yeah,
it just leaves so many questions hanging.
it does.
Like those injuries,
Right.
the lack of debris.
Yeah,
I mean, these were experienced hikers.
they were.
You'd think they'd know better than to camp in an avalanche-prone area,
I
right?
really think.
So it's hard to shake this feeling that there's something more to the story.
I agree. And one of the biggest challenges with this case is that there's so much information out there.
So much information.
It's hard to separate fact from fiction.
It's like wading through a swamp of theories and speculation.
Exactly. And it's easy to get bogged down in the details.
To cherry pick evidence to
Uh-huh.
fit a narrative.
Right, we have to be careful about that.
We have to look at the big picture.
Big picture, yeah.
So let's revisit those alternative explanations.
Okay.
We're talking about those katabatic winds.
Those powerful downslope winds.
And you mentioned that Kolat-Sakal, that mountain where they camped.
Yes.
It has a similar terrain to Anaris Mountain in Sweden.
Where there was a tragic incident involving those winds back in 1978.
Can you tell us more about that incident?
Sure. So both locations have these steep slopes,
They
and
do.
those slopes act like funnels, basically. And it intensifies those downslope winds, makes them even stronger.
Wow.
So in that 1978 incident, these hikers in Sweden, they were caught completely off guard by a sudden katabatic windstorm.
Just out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere, and sadly, several of them didn't survive.
Oh, no.
The wind was so strong, it ripped their tents apart.
Like, just shredded them.
Shredded them, yeah, and scattered their belongings everywhere.
It sounds so similar to what happened to Dyatlov Pass.
It does, doesn't it?
The hikers fleeing their tent, the scattered gear, the struggle to survive in those extreme conditions.
Yeah, the parallels are definitely there.
But could wind alone really explain those horrific injuries?
That's the question, isn't it?
I mean, those broken bones, the internal damage.
Yeah, it's not like they were just pushed around by the wind.
It's like they were hit by a truck, but there was no truck.
Right. So while the katabatic winds could explain why they abandoned the tent.
And the damage to the tent.
Exactly.
It's harder to imagine them causing those specific types of trauma.
Especially those skull fractures, the chest compression.
It just doesn't quite add up.
It doesn't.
Unless, what if they were hit by something carried by the wind?
Like debris caught in those powerful gusts.
Almost like natural shrapnel.
It's possible.
Or maybe they were injured while trying to escape the wind's force.
Trying to build a shelter, maybe?
Right, because remember, we don't have a complete picture of what happened.
We're missing those crucial final moments.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle with some of the pieces missing.
A puzzle with faded pieces.
Yeah, we get these glimpses of what might have happened.
But the full image remains elusive.
All right, so let's move on to that infrasound theory.
The one where sound waves can cause panic and hallucinations.
Yeah, that one always sounded a little far-fetched to me.
It does sound a bit out there.
But you mentioned there's actual science behind it.
There is.
So can you break that down for us?
Sure. So infrasound refers to sound waves at a frequency that's so low that we humans can't actually hear them.
We can't hear them at all.
Not consciously, no.
Wow.
But even though we can hear them, they can still have effects on us.
Effects? Like what kind of effects?
Both physical and psychological.
Okay, now I'm intrigued.
For example, studies have shown that exposure to infrasound can trigger feelings of unease.
Like anxiety?
Anxiety, yeah, and also dizziness, nausea.
Really? Just from sound waves we can't even hear?
It's pretty wild, right?
That's crazy.
And some people even experience visual distortions or hallucinations.
So it's like messing with your mind.
Exactly.
It's making me think of that scene in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
With the mashed potatoes.
Yeah, where they're all drawn to Devil's Tower.
And they can't explain why.
Yeah, like some unseen force is compelling them.
It's that feeling of unease, like something's not right.
Exactly.
It's been theorized that infrasound can trigger that primal fear response.
Fight or flight.
Fight or flight, yeah, like when we face a real threat.
So maybe those hikers weren't running from something they could see.
Maybe they were running from something they could feel.
Their own fear, amplified by these sound waves.
Their minds turning against them.
That's a terrifying thought.
It is.
But it still doesn't explain those injuries.
You're right, that's the big weakness of this theory.
Broken bones, internal bleeding.
Infrasound can explain the panic, the disorientation.
But not the physical trauma.
Right, so maybe they sustained those injuries during their panicked flight?
Falling, colliding with something in the dark.
It's possible.
But we just don't know for sure.
We don't.
Okay, so we've got these natural explanations that sort of fit.
Sort of.
But also leave us with more questions.
More questions, yeah.
So I guess it's time to tackle the elephant in the room.
The military theories.
The ones that get everyone's imaginations going.
Parachute mines, secret weapons, government cover-ups.
It's like stepping into a Cold War spy movie.
It is, and those theories definitely add another layer of complexity to this whole case.
So where do we even start with all of that?
Well, let's start with what we do know.
Okay.
We know that the Soviet Union was conducting military tests in that region.
Around the same time as the incident.
Right, and there are documented cases of parachute mine testing in the area.
Parachute mines. What are those?
They're mines that are designed to detonate in the air.
Not on impact.
No, they explode above ground.
That's terrifying. And that could explain those internal injuries.
Especially the ones without any external wounds.
Right, because if something explodes above you.
It could cause that kind of damage.
But were there any reports of explosions?
There are some reports from locals who claim to have seen strange lights.
Like what kind of lights?
They describe them as bright flashes or orbs in the sky.
Like UFOs?
Some people thought so, but it was never confirmed.
Okay, so we have these strange lights and possible explosions.
And then there's the radiation found on some of the clothing.
That's the detail that always sends chills down my spine.
It's definitely one of the most intriguing pieces of evidence.
Because radiation, that suggests something more than just a natural disaster. It suggests something deliberate, something man-made.
And that's what fuels those cover-up theories.
Because if there was some kind of military experiment gone wrong,
The government might have tried to cover it up.
to protect their secrets.
Right.
It all sounds very cloak and dagger,
It does, doesn't it?
but we have to be careful not to jump to conclusions.
We do. And remember, we're dealing with information that's over 60 years old.
So it's possible some of the evidence has been lost or misinterpreted.
Exactly. And eyewitness accounts can be unreliable.
Memories fade, details get distorted.
And sometimes people see what they want to see.
So it's like trying to piece together a puzzle where some of the pieces are missing.
And the ones we have might not even belong to the same puzzle.
It's a real head scratcher.
It is.
But even with all the uncertainty, all the unanswered questions,
There's something about this case that just grabs hold of you.
and doesn't let go,
It does, and I think that's why it continues to fascinate us.
because it reminds us that there are still mysteries out there.
Mysteries that might never be solved.
But that doesn't mean we stop searching for answers.
We keep digging, we keep questioning, and we keep the memory of those hikers alive.
Absolutely. And we'll be right back after a quick break to explore some of those more nuanced aspects of the case.
The little details that might just hold the key to unlocking this mystery.
Stay with us. We're back and ready to tackle some of those loose ends in the Dyatlov Pass incident.
Those little details that just don't seem to fit neatly into any one theory.
Yeah, like that paradoxical undressing we talked about,
Where hypothermia victims actually feel hot.
and start taking off their clothes.
Right, but in this case,
Some of the hikers were actually trying to layer up.
it's a weird contradiction, isn't it?
It is, so how do we make sense of that?
Well, one possibility is that paradoxical undressing might only affect certain people.
Or maybe it kicks in at different stages of hypothermia.
It's also possible that some of the hikers were just more susceptible to the cold than others,
Maybe because of their clothing or their physical condition.
or how exposed they were to the elements.
Right, because they weren't all found in the same place.
Exactly, so it's likely they experienced those final hours differently.
It's tough to imagine. Lost and alone in the freezing darkness.
Their minds and bodies slowly shutting down.
It must have been terrifying.
Absolutely, and it really highlights the limits of human endurance.
How far we can push ourselves before we break.
And then there are those discrepancies in the locations of the bodies.
The inconsistencies and the distances reported between the tent and the pine tree.
It's almost like the scene was tampered with.
Or maybe it was just a sloppy investigation.
It was a long time ago, in a remote location.
Right, and with those harsh conditions,
Mistakes could have been made,
details might have been overlooked.
or misrecorded.
But we can't ignore that pressure from higher-ups to wrap up the investigation quickly.
There was definitely a sense of urgency.
Almost like they wanted to bury the story.
And that just adds another layer of intrigue to this whole thing.
It really does, because what if there are pieces of this puzzle we're still missing?
Information that was intentionally kept secret.
Or lost to time?
It's possible.
And that's what keeps people coming back to the Dyatlov Pass incident.
The hope of uncovering a hidden truth.
The allure of the unknown.
Because sometimes the most compelling stories are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers.
They make us think, they challenge our assumptions.
And they remind us that there's still so much we don't understand about the world.
And about ourselves.
The Dyatlov Pass incident is one of those stories.
A chilling reminder of nature's power, the fragility of human life, and the enduring mystery of the unknown.
We may never know exactly what happened on that mountain,
But the search for answers continues,
and the story of those 9 hikers will live on.
inspiring us to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep searching for the truth.
Even when it seems impossible to find.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Dyatlov Pass incident. We encourage you to check out the Dyatlov Foundation website for photos, documents, research papers, and more. Until next time, keep those minds curious and never stop questioning.